Hello and welcome back to the Slipstream Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm your host, Rich Ward, along with my co-host, Hannah Brooks. Hannah, how are you?
I am very well as always.
Excellent. And we are delighted to have our first guest on in the podcast. It's Hugh Barter. Hugh, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on board.
Not a problem at all. Delighted to have you here, and I'm really excited for this podcast to hear about your story, your background, what you're doing, where you're going, and everything about Hugh. So, kick us off, Hugh, with firstly, the story behind you as a racing driver. Tell us from the start. Just tell us your story.
Yeah, this is going to be a long one. So I was born in Japan. My mum's fully Japanese. My mum is fully Australian. And when I was 2 years old, I moved to Australia. And basically, since from that age, I was always had an interest in motorsport or mechanics. I was always on the scooter, like a toy scooter, trying to go as fast as I could. Playing with screwdrivers, wrenches, having no idea what they did, but still using them on my scooter. And I think at the age of 3, my dad took me to the Formula One as well as the V8s, and I loved it. As my dad says, my eyes lit up, and basically had a love for the sport since then. And then when I was 4 years old, again I went to the V8s, and I basically begged my dad to go on this simulator. Me being 4 years old, I'm like yay tall. I was tiny. Like, for give you a bit of an insight, I only hit 5 foot when I was like in year 8. So I was miniature for a lot of my life. And basically he said, "Oh, I'm too small," which was true. There's no chance I was reaching the pedals. And basically, I begged him to the point that he asked the guy who was the owner of this sim, place, that if he could do the pedals while I steered. And he said, "Yeah, you can do that." And I know you guys may know Bathurst. I did some laps at Bathurst and managed to not hit any walls for the entire time, which was quite impressive for a 4-year-old. And when I got off, a crowd had formed behind me, and people started giving me their stuff that they had bought during the day. And for me, like, this was not a big deal. I was not looking too much into it, but my dad was like, "Oh, this could be something here." And unbeknownst to me, when I turned 5 the year after, he got me a go-kart, and or actually no, that year he bought me a simulator, like a really cheap simulator, PS2 with some games. And then the year after, I got my first go-kart. And ever since then, I've been working up through the ranks. Through karting, winning state titles, winning some national events, going to Europe to represent Australia twice, and then in 2020, I had the offer to go to a scholarship in France. And basically they tested your physical, mental, your driving, and all the rest, how you presented yourself to the media. And I won the scholarship, thankfully, and basically that got me a drive in the 2021 French F4 Championship. And I did only, I think, 7 days of testing prior to the championship, so it was very limited testing on my behalf, because it was a big change for me. Moving from Australia to Europe, the whole family coming over was a huge commitment, not just for me but as a family. And it wasn't an easy one. It was a bit of a deer in headlights, I'd say, but I still managed to, I'd say, do well as a debut season in Formula Cars, finishing second. And then in 2022, I raced French F4 and Spanish F4. I had a really good campaign in both series. I think getting a combined of 13 wins, 15 wins. I honestly, numbers. And then I did FIF3 in 2023. Had a good start to the season, qualifying 5th, and then just a few struggles along the way, and not getting quite the result that we needed in quali. Obviously, F3 being quite your weekends determined by quali. But there was good progress this season, and then unfortunately had to miss the last round due to funding issues. But yeah, that's a bit of a short, brief idea of who I am and how I got to my position now.
Incredible. Firstly, what a story! Like going from a racing sensation at 4 years old all the way to obviously FIA F3, which is incredible. Firstly, where's your favourite place to race?
I before last year it was easily Spa. I think that's such a historic track, and as a kid growing up, driving on the simulator constantly, it's sort of surreal when you actually drive there for the first time. It's like you're there. This is something that you dreamed of like since you were like 5 years old, and when you finally go through Eau Rouge for the first time flat out, it's just like your guts. You can feel everything sink down in your body, and it's just an amazing feeling. But then after driving this year, a bit of bias, Australia was really cool. Also Monaco, but I think Australia was even better purely because it's so fast and it's not your typical street track, but because you got, a bit of grass between the walls, but because you're so fast, any small mistake at that track is going to be a big crash. It's not like Monaco where you can kind of graze the walls and get away with a bit of a love tap and a kiss here and there. But in Australia, it's like you dip a wheel in the grass and there's most likelihood you're going in the wall at like 100 kilometers.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And
Yeah.
just explain what it's like to be an F3 driver. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people going to be listening to this who are racing drivers, would love to be where you were sitting, but just explain to us what F3 is like.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable actually. The community is very close and tight knit. That's for sure. Even the F2 drivers that even though we're in sort of different areas, everybody's very close with each other and everybody knows each other. Obviously, at the end of the day, we are competitors, but um, we're we're still able to socialize off track, and obviously being a support event to the F1 is really cool. You see it's almost like it's just normal to see like Max Verstappen walk by or Lewis Hamilton. It's like sort of people that you look up to while in karting and through your younger stages of your career. I just walk past in front of you and you're like, oh my god, like there's Nico Hulkenberg or whatever who it may be, and you gotta be like, nah, that's just another driver to you now. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a cool experience and something that you really have to be, I'd say, grateful and appreciate it in the moment, because I know a lot of people can't or wish they could be there. So just make the most of it, I think.
Amazing. So, can I ask then, what is this year for you? So, both like on track and off track, what are your aspirations?
So this year is a bit of a difficult one for me because, as some of you may know, that last year I had a bit of like a funding issue, and that's why we couldn't compete in the last round of FIF3. Um, no, like hard feelings to the sponsor. He got me where I was in my career. Without him, there was no chance I was doing F3. No chance I would have done two campaigns, two different series in 2022. A big shout out to him. He was amazing. So this year we are still having to find new sponsors. We need to start up the wheel and start up the engine to try and find new people out there to support me. But yeah, until then, there is no, I'd say, confirmed seats. Obviously, F3 is not an option, but the aspirations and the end goal is still Formula One, and I still definitely think it's possible. I think my season last year was a bit. It was a good start and then pretty rocky in the middle phase. I think purely because of, I'd say, more so a bit of mentally not being in the right headspace. But I think with the second season of F3, I'll definitely be able to perform like much better, and I think I proved that in a second season of F4. Doing two campaigns and coming away with like I said, 15 wins was a massive improvement from my first year in F4, only coming with 2 wins in the first season.
Amazing. So, can I ask? And you talk about this kind of like it's almost like discipline of the mind, like when you've got these kind of aspirations. So, what would you say are your kind of non-negotiables? What's like your beating drum that keeps you like going, essentially?
Like what's my motivation sort of thing,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
I don't I don't know if it's like motivation. I think it's just drive, and like how much I enjoy the sport. I don't like to base too much of my drive and like motivation off like, I don't know, I want to win, and if I don't win, I don't have motivation. I think that is the wrong sort of approach to a lot of things, because if you don't win, then you know I think you start to lose a bit of like will to try harder. But I think it's sort of like, if I don't win, then I want to try hard. I want to put the extra hours in so I can win. Um, you know, I think just the motivation stems from me loving the sport and me loving what I do.
No,
Amazing. I
100%. I
mean,
think
yeah,
I think both Hannah and I will completely agree with this. We're both massive on personal development and growth, and okay, ours is our personal life and business. Obviously, yourself, it's your personal life and your racing, but it definitely correlates. Like, what things do you do on a daily basis to help yourself grow and become the best version of yourself?
Yeah, so on a daily basis, obviously, I have split my last 2 years of school across three, so I've still got one more year of school. But if I'm not doing school, I drive in the sim. I don't know if you can see, I'm in my sim currently, and I do a lot of sim work, and I'm always trying to find like new ways to improve my driving. You're never perfect, as well as lots of training. 5 days a week. That could be a combination of strength training, cardio, and then also just setting myself, a couple challenges here and there. Obviously being out of the car, it, racing is something that you're never doing your sport as much as some other sports. Tennis, you can go down to the local tennis court and play tennis, but in racing you can't do this. So I enjoy setting myself challenges, and one of my recent ones was to do half marathon and a marathon, and yeah, stuff like this, just to keep myself, in shape and ready for whatever comes about. Also, mental stuff is important, but I'd say this is more to do with the sim or whatever, nothing to do with like personal challenges.
amazing.
I do often feel like, I mean, for me, I mean, I get up early doors. I mean, I'm a bit of an early bird. I like getting up at the crack of dawn. I go for a run or go to the gym or whatever. I do a lot of meditation and gratitude. That's something big for me. When I first wake up, I go and do 15 minutes of meditation. I then go and write down my goals and what I'm grateful for the day. And then obviously I shower after my exercise, whatever it is, and that's a cold shower. For me, cold showers really sharpen the mind, and people think you're mad doing it, and you probably are, but I absolutely love it. But that does really set you up for the day. And okay, mine is business growth, but it's still exactly the same thing. I think entrepreneurs and athletes are so similar. We mentioned this on our first episodes, but athletes and business owners are so similar in what they do and how they need to perform to be the best versions of themselves, to constantly grow, constantly get better, just improve all the time. And I think that's exactly what you're doing as well. And I think people out there listening, and especially other racing drivers or entrepreneurs who may be at the start of their journey, need to sort of realize the commitments and sacrifices you've made in your career. Like you said, you've split your school years. You haven't necessarily followed your school years because you're following your career as such. You
Yeah,
treat racing as a business. It's a you know it is
and
your career,
I
it's
would
your life.
say, yeah, and I would say I was super lucky that obviously my parents are super supportive of what I do, and getting into the sport at a super young age. Dad knew that I would have to as a family that we don't have the financial support to get to Formula One, and so he built up my profile at like quite a young age, and without that, there's no chance that we would have got to Europe in the first place. So along the way, obviously, I've learned about stuff, like investments and things like this that are more attractive to business owners to support me. But yeah, it's stuff like this that you really, as a driver and as an athlete, you have to think about, because just performing is not enough.
And I think you made a massive point there, and I think like I want to speak about your dad and obviously your mum as well, who's going to be a big part of that too. You've got to make sacrifices as an athlete, but they've made massive sacrifices to get you where you are essentially. Without their help, they've moved from Australia to Europe to allow you to race, which is huge. Dad's. I spoke to him yesterday, and he's just incredible how he's given pretty much all day, every day, in trying to get you back out on track as well. So it's huge sacrifices that they're making for you. But tell us a little bit about their background and the sacrifices they have been making to help you get to where you are.
Yeah, so well, a bit of background on both my mum and dad. So my dad's a chef by trade, so nothing to do with motorsport at all. He did occasional, a bit of go-karting here or there, but nothing to do with it. Mum was studying to be a lawyer and then just decided to switch to landscape designing. So again, nothing to do with motorsport. And she actually got super involved in my career after my sister finished high school and started coming to the track a lot more often, to the point where she started basically becoming my, let's say, like technical engineer for my go-kart, writing down all the cars to camber, toe in, toe out, sprockets, ride heights, all these settings. And so mom started getting really into it after my sister graduated high school. And yeah, basically since the age of 5, Dad's been helping me every day, all day, looking out for me, giving me the wisdom, I'd say, that I definitely didn't have. Being so young, I would say I was naive. And in motorsport, there's a lot of, I'd say, sharks out there. People aren't always in for your best interests, and probably not motorsport, also in business also. I'd say this happens a lot, and there's been a couple of times, I won't name names, but I think this person's being nice to me, and Dad will say, he won't say anything. He'll be like, he'll just like, just give me this look, and I'll be like, what? And then he goes, no, just interesting, your perspective on it. And then you find out, like, I don't know, 3 months later, like, okay, this is why they were doing this, or but like, everybody wants to get a gain out of something, and it's just, I think he also wants me to learn the best ways and learn for myself, through experience, and not just spoon feeding me this information, because I think the best way of learning is through experience. So yeah, they've done a lot of things for my career, and they've put these huge sacrifices in moving countries. It's not a easy thing to just pack up, everything in at home and then move a whole different continent. It's not like an easy flight just from, I don't know, let's say Spain to France or Spain to England. No, this is a 25-hour flight, never going back to Australia, or tops like once every 2 years. So it was a big commitment, and yeah, just super grateful for both of them.
I'd just like to say, like, it's becoming more apparent to me the more people I speak to in motorsport how much family is crucial to like developing that young talent through. I mean, so when I was younger, there was no opportunities really for me to kind of get involved in motorsport. It was just a fascinating subject. So, and I think something I'm quite passionate about, and me and Rich have spoken about this today, is seeing young girls coming into the sport and progressing and kind of giving them that kind of pathway opportunities. So that's something we're quite keen to kind of look at in the future. But yeah, I mean, what is your perspective on that? kind of pathway in the sport?
The which pathway? Sorry.
Just generally, like young people getting involved in motorsport. Because obviously, you've had a lot of support from your family and things like that. But what would you like to see motorsport become for like younger generations?
For me, motorsport was not only because it's something that it's not only something that I really enjoy as a sport. Um, it's, I'd say, giving me the opportunity to become really close with my family. You know, it's not. There's a lot of my friends aren't as close as I am with my parents. That I am with my parents. Um, purely because that almost every weekend for how many years now? I've been in motorsport for 13 years. I was spending with my dad. You know, from 6 a.m. in the morning to till I go to sleep. You know, I was with my dad all day, every day on the weekend. Um, and because of that, we know each other so well, and our relationship isn't just you know, father and son, and my relationship with my mum is not just uh mother and son. It's you know, we're like best mates. And he's also, I'd say, my manager to a certain degree. And we have to decipher, you know, which hats we put on in which circumstances. So I'd like to see this side of the younger developing people coming through, because I feel like sometimes this can get lost within the sport, because the families also do put like a lot of money in. Some families do put their own personal money in, because and then it becomes a bit, I'd say, personal if they can't get what they want. But because it's a bit of, for us, it's a third party, we are we're here to enjoy it because we need to be grateful of the opportunity that we've been given. So yeah, I'd say that's how I'd like to see more of that. But yeah, that's what it is for me, at least.
I think that's
Amazing,
a really
thank you.
interesting point that you've made there. Is that, you know, motorsport is a team sport, even though it's one driver. You know, in most championships, obviously some championships are, you know, multiple drivers, but most, like quite a few championships are one driver, but actually it's a whole team behind that. And like you said, your relationship with your family has got so much closer because of that. And you know, you mentioned Drive to Survive on the first episode, but the fact is that people, you see that connection. I mean, there was, you know, Lance and Lawrence Stroll. For me, that connection is so close, and everyone goes, "Oh, Lawrence just got thrown his money about, and his son goes wherever." Because yeah, but there's such a tight knit relationship between them because of that journey that they've been on.
Yeah,
And yes, money does talk. Let's not beat around the bush with that. It does. It
yeah,
does
yeah,
obviously help, but you know, at the end of the day, it's kind of like they'll do whatever they can to make it work. And it's the same, you know, okay, you haven't got Lawrence Stroll's money, but your dad's doing and your mum do everything they possibly can to give you the best opportunity you can just to get there. And I think that's
yeah.
incredible. And
And
I
I
think
think,
actually, gone.
yeah, like just to add on to that, I think obviously them being my mum and dad, I'm always in this sort of like state of mind that I can trust them. You know, they've always got my best interest in helping me out. And I think if I wasn't here with my mum and dad, it's sort of like another element that I would have to think about constantly. You know, is this the best thing for me? And I can now have like a third party that I can trust 100%, that, you know, this is what their thoughts on something, and that I can 100% think, okay, yeah, this is a valid point, and I don't have to think, okay, does this benefit them? Because at the end of the day, they're my mum and dad.
No, 100%. So one thing we always like to finish on, and I think I mean, when we recorded our first episode, we kind of only briefly touched on this because we kind of ran out of time. But I'd love to ask you, if there was one person in the world that you could spend an hour with, and they could be alive or dead, it's not a problem. But who would that be, and why?
uh, I'm going about this two ways. I'm going about this the one way it's like like my own personal interests, and then there's the way that, okay, maybe like I could get some useful information to use for my own personal career. Um, if it was the first option where it's like personal interests, I don't know if you guys know Neil deGrasse Tyson. Maybe you guys know him. I'm super into astrology. No, astronomy. Oh my god, do I get those two mixed up? um, so I'm super into that stuff, and I've watched a lot of his like lectures and what would you call them? Like just things that he says and stuff like this. And I think he's a really cool guy, and he explains things very well for someone with a basic knowledge to understand. And I think that can be really hard for, like, for example, me. Let's say if I'm coaching someone that's I'd say in the lower ranks, and I have to explain something to them that's very complicated. This can be really hard, and I think Neil deGrasse Tyson does this extremely well. He'll explain the most complicated theories in the easiest way and put it into like really simple form. And another one, I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know, Bill Gates. I don't know, another businessman that I can probably somehow find out how to make some money from.
No,
But yeah,
absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I think most people love to spend a bit of time with Bill Gates, especially to get those little tips. Even if you get a fraction of his wealth, you're doing incredibly well. So, no,
yeah.
absolutely. Hugh, just out of interest, like obviously one thing we're doing here is promoting young, exciting racing drivers, along with what we do with business owners, entrepreneurs, and people around motorsport. But if someone wanted to connect with you, find you, and engage with you, how can they? Firstly, like obviously, social media is a big one, but how can they that person sort of connect with you, and engage with you really?
Yeah, so obviously, like you said, socials is an option. I'm on most platforms at Hugh Barter Racing, so Twitter or X now, whatever you want to call it. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn is a big one, I know, for a lot of business people. There is my dad and my email on my website, Chris at hughbarterracing.com and Hugh at hughbarterracing.com. So any like inquiries or maybe potential partnerships that someone that's watching this wants to work together on, just email us there. And yeah, obviously we can get talking about how we can both benefit from a partnership, not just one way.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm sure Hannah will be exactly the same. But it's been fantastic having you on the podcast. It's been great chatting to you, and yeah, I really do hope that you find the funding to get you out on track. It'd be great to see you, like competing at the top of F3 as well, and really showing your talent. I think you're such a down to earth guy who's so grateful. Your heart's in the right place, especially for your family. So from me, and I'm sure Hannah is the same. We wish you the very best of luck for the year and your career moving forward.
Thank you, really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thanks,
Not
you.
a problem.